All right. Excited to have you here, Steve. Every time I meet you, Steve, I learn something new, and I am very confident that I'm going to learn something new today as well. So, what is going on at WonderBotz?
I tell you, Shail, we are actually almost 6 years old as a company, and it blows my mind the growth that we've been blessed with a great team, with great clients, and it's just fabulous as we the progression that we've made, and it's all really been around the main basic principle of speed to value, speed to outcomes for our clients. We are a solution-driven organization. We have always been a solution and value-driven organization, and our team rallies around it, our clients rally around it, and we're just like we have the right formula here. And of course, Bobby and I are sort of the like if we say we're going to do it, it's going to get done, and we always do it no matter what. So we've been great luck. But I tell you, like I've been watching this vocal thing that you've set up here, and I have to say I'm really excited for you also. So can you describe vocal for the crowd?
Yeah, Vocal is, a very interesting customer think tank that I created about 18 months ago because I saw a significant gap in the market. And Vocal stands for Voice of Customer in the Automation Landscape. It's a automation customer only think tank. We don't have vendors or analysts or service providers in this group. They're all practitioners, COE leaders, CIOs, CFOs in the group. We're now up to 87 members in this group worldwide, so 87 organizations in this
Wow.
group,
Wow.
all enterprise customers. So we've got Coca-Cola, Uber, Pandora, GE, Netflix, Dubai Airports, JP Morgan, Eli Lilly, Estee Lauder, Home Depot, Colgate Palmolive. I mentioned Netflix earlier as well, and several other members in this group. So it's super exciting and a super dynamic group to be a part of.
Wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's certainly an exciting time in automation. As you know, there's a lot of interest in what's going on in automation and this whole concept around various different technologies, the technology sprawl that's occurring in the market. And that's where I think, insights from companies like WonderBotz and what we're doing at Vocal Council become critically important. One of the things that's coming up quite often is this whole concept of a digital worker DNA. And what does that actually mean? For example, what did automation used to look like? What is it now, and where will it go in the future? It's a very interesting topic. I'm interested in your views on that, Steve.
So when we borrow that from the DNA concept, we borrow the identity of an individual, right? So if you think about when digital workers were first formed ages ago, they were really just hands, and the hands created an opportunity for us to do a number of use cases for clients and add value to it over time. But hands are only hands. So
Hmm.
as that first layer, so the next layer, then if you think about IDP, intelligent document processing. So now, because the hands required structured information, now the next layer is like by adding IDP and sensors and even chat dialogues between users and the robots. Now we have information and structure, and then that exploded the number of use cases that we're able to do and the number of new types of outcomes that digital workers are able to deliver. But up to a couple of years ago, that's kind of where it ended. But now we're seeing the surge in the market around introduction of AI and advanced machine learning into this. To now, it's like we go from hands to eyes and ears and touch to brains. So we actually have now, I would say, a whole digital worker in that concept, and the technologies have become better and better and so much easier to bring together to produce the outcomes. Of course, we're all about outcomes. So by enabling more use cases, we really greatly expand the value of a digital worker into an organization. And it just without actually getting rid of the old use cases. So it's just additive on value. And that's how I think about, that's how I talk to clients. I don't know from your side, if you twist that or add to that story a little bit.
Yeah, I think I would add that there are various components of individual technologies that are available to customers out there. There are IDP capabilities, process mining capabilities, RPA capabilities, and then we have this milkshake of terms that exist out there, right? Hyper automation, strategic process automation, DPA, RPA, and various other sort of terminologies that exist. And the question is a digital worker really just a collection or amalgamation of all those technologies? uh, First of all, there isn't a cohesive platform out there yet. I think vendors are aspiring to create that type of a platform. But does that really make a digital worker without the domain expertise in the mix? And this is where the vertical piece comes in a very sort of important way, in my opinion, right? Do you have an accounts payable digital worker for um, healthcare? And is that the same for an audit firm, as an example, or a financial services firm? Where does the domain expertise lie? And I think particularly with companies like yours that are working with various different verticals, what are your thoughts on domain expertise injection into a digital worker?
I think of the automations as the job description for the digital worker.
Mhm.
And I totally agree with you. I wish years ago the industry had aligned on a common term to describe all of this, because we're all talking about the same thing using slightly different labels and pretending it's something different than what it is.
Right.
But to me, it is the aggregate of this collection of technologies that we're talking about right now that either are the DNA and the building blocks of the digital worker. And whether we call it hyper automation, intelligent process automation, RPA, doesn't really matter, in my opinion. But then when you kind of get to the domain, you have a job description, right? So I could give anyone a job description, uh, and they'll do their best to do their job. But maybe like if you have a degree or you have some domain expertise, now when I give you the job description, you're better equipped to perform the work and create the outcome related to that.
Right.
And that's where I think companies like WonderBotz and your clients, when they bring their specific expertise about their business problems and then drive that expertise into the solutions, that's where that's when the magic happens, and the digital worker becomes, I know it's a task worker, becomes more like a knowledge worker because it's bringing the collective expertise. And then for us and for your team, when we harvest that across many situations, we make it, it takes a village. It takes a village to raise a kid. Maybe it takes a village to raise a digital worker. I don't know if maybe there's a digital concept that equates to that. I can't think of that. But yes, it's kind of like the degree program to put the digital worker to work in addition to the job description. Totally agree. Whether it's industry, a deep industry for like if you're a manufacturer, kind of knowing what that's about, or if you're sitting in HR, well, there's a lot of similarities across HR or finance and accounting departments. And that's why people specialize in that and they have careers in that. So it's the same kind of thinking, except it's at the robot level.
So tell me, Steve, how do you think AI contributes in the digital worker construct? There's a lot of talk about AI. There's a lot of hype. There is some reality to it. What's your take on that?
It's when I look at AI as the brains of the digital robot, AI has been around for a long time, but there's a flavor of AI now that I think is really coming in to be valuable for us. So when I talk to clients, it's like there's AI for decision making, where I'm trying to do vast assessment of data to come up with a point of view for leadership so that they can make the best strategic decisions for the company. And then there's an AI dimension in terms of what can we integrate into the operations of an organization, which is really what we're talking about when we're talking about digital workers.
Mhm.
So, and that's the category that's really got me excited, because that's what we're seeing. All firms all over the world are innovating different ways to operationalize AI for digital workers. And I see that, like, there's a great example of we talk email triage, right? Where if your company, your customers, your vendors, your suppliers are sending in emails to you, making requests or asking for information or whatever it is. Today, people have to read those emails, and if they can answer them, great. If they can't, they're going to forward them to somewhere else in the organization. And that, of course, creates delay for the person making the request, and we don't know how urgent the request might be. But now we can train AI models to grab that email coming in and read it, use it in natural language. We don't have to require that the sender write in some kind of SQL-like code to get the answer. They could just say, hey, I need, like, how much did I buy from you last month? Or is there any money left on my PO? Natural language kind of inquiries that the robot, I refer to them as a robot, it's a digital worker, so can read that with the help of AI. Now, so we can take that unstructured conversational natural language understanding and structure it. So then the question is, have we taught the robot to answer that question? Because if we have, then the robot will just go and answer the question and come back, hey, Shail, you have like $10 left on your PO. If you want more, you're going to have to issue another PO. Or it's also smart enough to know, I haven't answered that question, so I'm going to send it over to Paula, and she's going to answer that question and either reply directly to the email or send it back to the robot, and the robot will reply to that. And just think how remarkable that is. Not that long ago, we marveled that we can read an invoice. Now we can read email, understand the email, and engage in a two-way conversation related to that. And I'm not talking like a chat bot that you say hi and it gives you, do you want one of these three things, push 1, 2, or 3. I'm talking about real natural language understanding baked into that to structure the information, to create alternatives for the digital worker to process the work. So Shail, this is just one example of I call operational AI at work in partnership to power a digital worker. And that gets me excited. But like, what's one that you see and like, wow, look at that.
I'm going to give you an example that doesn't have anything to do with our desktop laptops or well, has to do with servers to some extent. But, Schneider Trucking is a company in the Midwest in the United States, and they run 18-wheelers that carry goods all across the United States. Each engine of the truck that they run costs about $1.5 million. Each breakdown can run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. They have about 650 breakdowns every year. That's because the driver gets, a code, a flashing light on the dashboard, and he or she has to struggle with, okay, what does this mean? And they pull aside and they pull out a huge manual to try to figure out what's going on. And that even delays their delivery times, which are very stringent. And they have a lot of dollars tied to the time of delivery. So what they did was using telematics, they started to beam up these codes through the cloud into their home servers. And using machine learning, they were able to decipher from these massive manuals what exactly is the error, and then send a simple English text message to the driver to say, this is what you should do. And that saved them millions of dollars. They went from 650 breakdowns a year to 0 using a combination of RPA and machine learning technology. So that's a very interesting use case that I've seen out there.
Did that also include a bit of predictive analytics to say like when the truck
Absolutely
is for maintenance?
Absolutely. Judging from past maintenance records of what has happened and how this error translates into what they have seen in the past, they were able to use that to drive the predictive capabilities as well.
I mean, just that pattern of something coming up, a person having to figure out what to do and kind of using AI to shortcut the choice there. I mean, that's a great example. We could put that anywhere. You could put that in a call center. They could be listening in on the call, help diagnose what the problem is, come back with the answer even before the person has finished answering the question. I mean, that's what we're looking at right now, a super high proactive application of AI integrated into the operations, not just for thinking and decisions, but to affect the day-to-day operations. That's a great example. Thanks for sharing that, Shail.
One of the interesting components of this digital worker and the DNA of a digital worker is around process mining. And we're seeing, a lot of interest to lukewarm interest in process mining. What are your thoughts, Steve, on the process mining industry? And
That
that includes task mining and discovery as well. I'm sort of lumping everything under process mining.
the basic goal of how do I use information about the process to make it better,
Right.
however, right? I totally agree with that. Thanks, Shail. Like this is a particular passion of mine right now. So I'm gonna share the story here and try to paint the picture. Okay, so I look at process mining, I look at task mining, I look at process discovery, and I get the goal. And I like, yes, like a fact, like who wouldn't love facts to make a decision, and applying analysis to fact patterns to find opportunities for automation, for improvement,
Mm-hmm.
or even training opportunities for employees, however that plays out. The challenge that
Right.
I have with a lot of the tools is that they're hard to use or have incomplete data sets that they're basing their recommendations on. So, for example, take process mining as a for instance. That requires that you have a system, more modern system that's capable of generating a log of what the user
Mm-hmm.
is doing. And ideally, you want to have multiple systems generating multiple logs for a particular user group so that we can see the interaction of the process across these systems in terms of the flow, variance to the flow, standardization, lack thereof, or whatever it is, right? So
Right.
that's good, but we also know, like all of us know, like people do a lot of work in Excel, they do a lot of work, in Word and email that's not captured by these logs. So you get a bit of Swiss cheese in that there's a lot of holes in the data set. Now, that's a very valuable data set, and you can learn a lot from that. But I think the devil's in the detail on this one, and the stuff that's happening adjacent to the system that's not quite in the system is probably as telling or more telling than what's actually happening in the system. So this is the gap that I've always had. Task mining, it's just essentially the same gap across all of these tool sets. Not the least of which is that once you get the data, you have to translate it, and you have to have the VA time to actually understand what it is and go from code 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to read the invoice, like translate it to English. I've been watching this with great interest, but not jumping into it until someone figures out the data challenges, I'm just going to wait. We found a way to address the data problems. So instead of starting from the process logs and then making decisions to go into task mining, we have a tool that gathers all of the data of what people are actually doing. It can consume the logs, but what they're actually doing at the desktop. Now you have this gigantic sea of data. And see, Steve, what am I going to do with 1 million events? We were just talking about AI. We use AI to form the events into tasks, and then to form the tasks into processes. And then we use AI to translate the tasks and processes into English so that someone could read what's happening and understand it. It's relatable. It's not some funky arcane code. It's what's happening. Okay. And we can, of course, consume the logs, as I said. So now you have, as I like to say, the facts. Now that we have the facts, what do we want to do with the facts, right? We can see, we can score this for, is this task well suited for automation? Does it have the characteristics of an automation? And then how complex would it be to build? And oh, by the way, have I already built something that I can leverage to speed that up? And that's around an automation, around an application. Or from a process improvement, I can say, is there a lot of variability in this task? Does the variability tend to be driven by a point of judgment that someone's making in the process? Or is there just like a lack of standards in the task, right? And then even down to at the individual employee level, it's like, hey, how is Steve doing compared to how he did last week? How is Steve doing compared to his peer group? Is he working? How long are the tasks taking? And we can start to introduce gamification into the employee enablement to turn it from that's interesting to I want to be the top of the scorecard here. And we can share that information with employees with the goal of helping them be better at their jobs. And maybe we're going to remix, like if I'm great at A, but bad at B, but you're great at B and bad at A, as a supervisor, I can remix the work based upon us individually, and I'll be able to see that. So it's like this whole ecosystem of task process and discovery is really about the facts. Now, once you have the facts, it's just the same thing like with digital worker. Once you have the hands, what would you do? Once you have the facts, what would you do? And that's why I think like we are about to see a next generation of these tools coming in, using all of the above to really empower organizations to focus their energies around automation, to build the best processes, and to help create environments for people where they can excel. That's my view. It's a long view. Thank you for indulging that. But Shail, like, what are you seeing around this process task discovery mining areas?
See, I think there's a lot of similarities to how process mining, task mining, discovery are growing in the market. There's a lot of similarity to what happened in the RPA space. Incredible amount of hype leading to commoditization of attended automation, at least on the RPA side of the spectrum. Yeah, and then there's consolidation in the RPA spectrum, in the RPA space as well. If you look at process mining, it seems like it's a similar story, just running on fast forward, in the context that there has been a lot more consolidation, a lot faster in process mining than what we have seen in the RPA space. Clearly, it has value, and many organizations are using it for identifying key areas that they want to automate, understanding their processes better. It's a lot better than having huge armies of consultants, the way things were done in the past, to determine what your processes should be. So process mining has certainly helped from that perspective. I think the big question I have that has not been answered, and I'm hearing it more and more from customers, is that unlike a bot that you create in your organization, that if you're running a critical process that becomes part of your organization, you switch off the bot and that automation dies. Unlike that, is process mining a lifetime continuum for an organization, or is it a short-term event for an organization for maybe the first 12 to 24 to 36 months in an organization's life cycle to determine and understand what are your processes and how do you improve them? Do you need process mining on a continual basis going forward? A lot of the process mining companies will say yes, because your processes change very often and they need to be optimized. And that sort of defeats the purpose of why would you have process mining in the first place. If you have it, you're optimizing those processes. And if you optimize those processes, do your processes change so much? Do you have new processes that come up as often in the organization? So I'm not sure about that whole lifetime continuum element of process mining. Do you have a view on that?
I do. Let me give you a story, a concept story around that, right? So way back when I did when I was a consultant before WonderBotz ages ago, I did a project for one of my clients, and we were trying to figure out the value of implementing a new solution in their environment. And we netted it down to, you have the top third of the performers, the middle of the performers, and the bottom of the performers. And we agreed that we probably aren't going to get too much more out of the top third, but if we could bring the bottom third up to average, that would be tremendously valuable to this organization. And I think that would apply to almost any kind of organization still today. So if you imagine now, that's about the individual, and the progression. So I look at from the employee activation and enablement. So now if we're always trying to move the top third, the bottom third to the middle, that is essentially redefining the thirds every time we make that change. So there's a continuous process there. And then, and that's really within the context of the current processes and the current automation. So when you make a process change or an automation, you're making a step change in that chart in terms of the value. So I kind of look at it as, yes, I could take the point of view of, it's a once and done, and we kind of move on. But if you think about it as a continuous journey with step change opportunities happening as we go along, then yes, I could see a lot of value in having something around on an ongoing basis, particularly if I can compare period to period. Like, how did we do it here? How did we do it there? And then what happened in between? And was it worth doing? And how is it delivering value? That's a continuous improvement, but it's across all of the levers of the employee, the process, and the automation. If you're just doing automation only, yeah, I think probably, because you don't change your applications that often.
Yeah.
Your processes only for improvement, we're trying to react to different markets, but companies don't change that frequently. And so I think the combination of everything adds the power to the process.
No, that makes sense. Steve, let's talk about one of the hottest topics that I am seeing in automation right now, which is, how do you manage all these automations? How do you manage a sprawl of technologies, multiple vendors? There are about 40,000 RPA customers in the market. About 40% of those 40,000 are using a dual vendor strategy today. How do you actually manage these? And I recently wrote a paper, I don't know if you had a chance to see it. It talks about the limitations of orchestrators and the rise of what I'm calling automation optimization tools. So any thoughts on how, automation management can be handled in the market today? How is it being handled, and how can it be handled?
I have to tell you, Shail, I was going to ask you that question because I know you just wrote a paper and you have a lot of thoughts on that. So let me give you my weak answer, and then you can come over the top with your brilliance and thoughts around that. So I do agree with you that I think it's one of the most underserved areas. Like, who is managing the automations? And we have these different orchestrators that each of the component platforms are bringing forward, but they don't work together. So now, like, every time you add a new component, it's like the nodal complexity of orchestrating everything gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think it's one of the most underserved areas. I don't know what the answer is, but I do think that it's a tremendous opportunity for single orchestration, point of orchestration, that can be bringing in the RPA or the IDP or the AI components to making sure that they're all available and working together in an integrated way to address the problem. And we're doing it efficiently, because a lot of these packages are bought, you buy capacity, and if you don't use it, you lose it, and it's waste. So the and then of course the other component to this, that I'm turning back to you to give the right answer. The other component is that we keep coming up with more specific components that add value to the digital worker that have to be integrated. So this problem isn't getting easier, it's getting harder, and it's getting harder very quickly. So I can help define the problem, but Shail, I suspect that you have a better answer.
No. You did a great job at answering that. I appreciate your insights, Steve. And as I told you earlier, as we began this, I always learn something when I speak with you. Look, I wrote this paper on orchestration and the limitations of orchestrators because no one's writing about orchestrators right now. I haven't seen a single paper on orchestrators. And in talking to various different customers and sort of just looking around in the market where, there are notes that we see in social media around, hey, we have 150,000 bots, or we have 125,000 bots, or we have 65,000 bots. And that's a head scratcher, and makes me wonder, okay, who's managing all those bots, right? And how do you have governance around those? And what happens when, bots fail, because they do fail at times. So there is an emergence around this whole concept of automation optimization. There are a few companies in that area that are providing this single pane of glass with integrations into various different technologies and various different vendors, right? RPA vendors or AI capability or process mining or IDP. There's a new term emerging as well in the market around process orchestration. As if we didn't have enough on the orchestration side, we have a new term. And by the time we finish this, there will be another new term as well, perhaps in the market. But there is a need for bringing these collective set of technologies under one single pane of glass. One company that comes to mind is Turbotic, as an example, right? They provide this single dashboard, single pane of glass to be able to manage all your automations, which includes the capability of doing ideation, capturing all the components around that ideation in a discovery module, and then building your bot and then controlling your bot and being able to derive value out of it. The advantage of that is that today you're having a challenge where customers are struggling with, how do I communicate automation value to my organization? How do I capture all the ideas? And how do I capture the life cycle of an idea all the way to an outcome? They're doing it in different ways. Companies are capturing ideas in SharePoint, as an example. They're capturing KPIs in a Word document or in Excel. Then they're creating, value presentations using PowerPoint, and then taking that into the organization. Today, you can't walk into a CFO's office and say, do you not have a tool for ERP? Many of them do. You can't go to a head of sales and say, you don't have a CRM tool? Many of them do. How is it that you can go to an automation COE and say, show me PowerPoints and show me Excels on how your automation value is being derived, right? Why isn't there a tool around automation optimization itself? We had one in the network space. It's called network optimization. We had the proliferation of cloud a decade ago, and today there are more than a dozen cloud optimization tools for optimizing your licenses and utilization. I believe there's a similar pattern in the automation space as well, with this rise of automation optimization capabilities. And there's a need for that because we're just continuing to see the rise of multi-vendor adoption and multiple technologies as well.
I think you're spot on. If you think the entire life cycle from concept to reality of an idea, right? As you're going through that life cycle, there are different decision points that need to be made. So often there are competing concepts because we can't do everything that we'd like to do. Now, within the context of concept to value, you have promise to reality, right? So like, what do we think was going to happen? What actually did happen? And there really are not toolkits that kind of bring the whole thing together. We were talked a moment ago about the process mining, task mining, gathering the facts. Okay, that could be a bit of the reality, but now we want to compare the reality against the actual promise that came when the sponsor or the originator of the idea said, oh, I could do 1,000 times more units if I had this, or whatever the answer is. There's nothing really in the market. Maybe this application you said can pull it together, but I think it's a big challenge. In fact, I also think it's one of the reasons why a lot of COEs struggle, because that same CFO that we go ask money has probably heard it all before, right? And they're looking at things with a healthy degree of well-learned skepticism, not cynics, but just like, this is the third time someone is going to give me a 1,000% increase, and I've yet to see anything, right? So I think it's the exploiting, a recognition that we're going to exploit lots of different componentry to set up bring our digital worker back in, so that they have the right degree and the right job description for, as a concept. It's like, now we're hiring, right? We're hiring our digital worker to do a job. And then the performance review, what actually happened after, assuming I hired them, I onboarded them, 6 months later, are they performing the way I wanted to in the job? I do think that the concept of a digital worker does actually, the analogy does actually still apply here as you go through it. But and we don't really have great managers of these digital workers yet. We haven't, it's management by isolated committee. It's not like someone's bringing it all together. So I do think it's a huge market opportunity for whoever can crack it, but not only conceive it, but then automate it, right? So that it's all there in front of us, right? Because if you have to pull information from 100 different systems to get the view, no one's going to do that, right? So, or we'd have to build an automation to do that, and we're kind of back again, and now we're a little circular in process. But I think that's a huge opportunity, and if we had it, if we could pull all the pieces together, that would be like even more rocket fuel on this digital worker, digital transformation, whatever moniker you want to put on it that we're seeing in the market.
Completely agree, Steve.
So Shail, we're living in troubled times right now. We're just coming out of this pandemic. The global economy is uncertain. We've got other stuff going on in other parts of the world that none of us are really happy about. Is the time good for digital workers, or are we going to have a setback from digital workers? What's your view? Is the current state of the world going to have us go faster and bigger, or are we going to be taking a step back?
I think we're starting to see the demand curve flatten for a lot of things out there, right? We're seeing inflationary price pressures in the market, but we're actually seeing a reversal when it comes to automation technology and cost of software to some extent, because there's huge discount rates that are being offered to push more and more bots out into the market. And there are companies that have bought a lot of bots, and some of them are sitting on the shelf. So I think my thought around your question is that there will still be demand, but it will be more around what is the value that is generated from the purchases that these organizations are doing. To your earlier point about focusing on value, which is what WonderBotz is known for. That's what we're going to see more and more from technology, licensed technology or technology-enabled services as well. Is how does that translate directly into value for me? And that's where, what we had talked about, this whole concept of automation optimization, measuring value from your automations is going to be even more critical.
Yeah, I agree with you. And there's a lot of opportunity because I think the concept of a digital worker is proven now. I don't think anyone is going to say, I got to do a pilot. We haven't had to do a pilot in ages. Now it's just the application of it for the use case, and the time to deploy these things are so fast that in most cases, we're talking about payback still in months, not measured in years. And there's very few places that companies can put their money and get that kind of a payback. So for what we're seeing, we barely ever talk about features and functions. We're always almost entirely talking about use cases and value. And it's kind of like alcohol, right? When the times are good, you sell more alcohol. When the times are bad, you sell more alcohol. So I think a bit of this on the digital workers is that they're proven, and we're kind of seeing an interesting dynamic. The priorities are shifting in terms of what people are wanting to do, but we still see tremendous growth in the market for this right now. And which of course we're delighted. We're delighted our clients are getting benefit. We're delighted, we're delighted to help that. And then of course the other thing is, despite everything, people are still having trouble finding employees to fill open seats. So
that's true.
What digital workers can do, we always say, well, we're not eliminating jobs, we're trying to enrich jobs, but we're also doing is we're creating an environment where your existing dedicated workforce can have opportunities to move around in your organization, and those known quantities can fill those seats for you. So again, I think the combination of rapid value, hiring avoidance, or just not in the bad way, but in the good way, is that I can fill the roles with a digital worker or an internal worker. So I'm very bullish. I'm very bullish on that, despite the down economy which we see, and we hope turns very quickly. Uh, we still see great prospects for what we do, you and I do, and our teams do, to help make life better for everybody. We always say, well, we're restoring humanity into business. That's our mantra. By subtracting the mundane, we're giving people a chance to be people and work with other folks and deliver the unique value that still people deliver, from community and from collaboration. So that's our view, and I think that the even the down market, we're still restoring humanity, and there's a lot more humanity for us to restore, I think, in the world.
No, I love that, Steve. And I would say that, there's often this term that you see floating around in the market, which is take the robot out of the human. You probably heard about that. And it's been talked about for quite some time. And to me, that's just taking something out of a human is just too surgical in many ways. It's not so much about taking the robot out of the human, it's actually putting the human back inside. And that's what you are talking about here in terms of the mission that you have at WonderBotz, which is phenomenal.
Well, and thanks, Shail. I think we're wrapping here, but awesome news on Vocal. I'd love to come and address your crew, your squad at some point. We can work that out, and love
Absolutely
to do more of these with you, Shail. Been excellent dialogue. Thank you for your collaboration today.
looking forward to it as well, Steve. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.